Matthew Holt, GCB Spotlight with old friend Roy Schoenberg, who has a new thing going on. So Roy forever was CEO of American Well. God, I'm old. I'm talking about the old name, AmWell, which is still going. And you're still now, Roy, get us straight. You're still on the board, but you're no longer the CEO, correct?
Correct.
Correct. Okay, so you're still associated with something, and you have a new thing, which we'll talk about in a second. So let's catch up quickly about AmWell. You have a new CEO, new management team there, and tell me a bit about the company, how it's doing, and what was the story there, other than you've been there a very, very long time.
Yeah, well, the story. I mean, so I think some people may talk about AmWell and maybe potentially Teladoc as kind of the companies that made telehealth become a thing. This was, of course, before COVID made the world want the thing.
Right.
And I think at that point, coming out of COVID, it became, commoditized, which has, on one hand, it's an extremely rewarding recognition because it means that we've done something right. It is, and this will forever be part of healthcare. But on the flip side, when you talk about, financial markets, getting commoditized is a bit of a different thing. But I think that the one thing that I would say is that, telehealth is not stopping. It's evolving in its role. I think that the notion of using telehealth to solve access is there. But one of the things that it has done is that it opened the door for healthcare to set up shop within people's own environment through technology. And now that that door is open, I think that the next generation of telehealth applications and telehealth capabilities is going to be about, so what else can come through the door? What are the disciplines? What other programs? What other ways of supporting individuals so that they can, have better well-being, but also potentially manage their healthcare reality better so they don't have to consume much more expensive resources where the healthcare buildings are. And I think that's exactly what we're seeing. And this is yet kind of another transformation in our understanding of telehealth and digital healthcare. And that is what AmWell is marching into, keeping up with the times.
So
I'm not doing justice, but that gives you a sense.
Okay. So tell me, who's running AmWell now? And today being a day that we're seeing another not yet profitable company finally going public in Omada Health, and this is the day we're recording this. Give me your sense of the future, and obviously the financial markets have been super tough on AmWell, super tough on Teladoc, and almost every other digital health company with the exception of Doximity, basically. And now, but we have seen Hinge go out and do successful well and profitable in different way. Now Omada is going to go out and see what the appetite is like for investors for a new but not yet profitable company. Give me a flavor of where AmWell is and where you think the market is, just on the financial side.
I think AmWell is, and I'm not managing the company. You ask who's running the company. Ido, my brother, is running the company. He's been the longtime co-CEO. Now he's the sole CEO of the company. I'm executive vice chairman of the board, so that's more of a governance, role than anything else. AmWell got to a point where it operates telehealth for a very large chunk of the healthcare infrastructure for this country, both on the payer side as well as on the health system side, as well as now growingly on the government side. And one of the things that we've always liked to do is to be, stay out of trouble. We're a cog in the wheel. We're not the story. So the brand of AmWell is really something that you don't see very much because you're interacting with the brands of, the respective payers, health system, and so on. I think that is an unbelievable infrastructure for that next revolution of telehealth, of having a lot of different products of healthcare, of digital healthcare coming over the telehealth platform into the reality of respectively members, patients, servicemen, and so on. And one of the things that we've done is we didn't blink. We understood that the technology has to refresh and evolve. We've invested enormous amount of time and effort and resources in building Converge, which is the next generation, brand new AI compatible, infrastructure for telehealth distribution of healthcare. So AmWell is in a ripe position, both because it is already deeply penetrated into the market, has been serving those customers exceptionally well over the years, and is speaking the language of digital healthcare going forward, not going backwards. The market still thinks of telehealth as a COVID technology. It still thinks of it as, oh, this is useful when everybody had to stay home and couldn't go out and the hospitals were closed. I think that sentiment is beginning to fade. I think people are beginning to understand that this is really a foundation to a lot of other things. So I think that, funnily enough, I think the future is bright.
So tell me what you think about the new, the prospects for more IPOs a la Hinge and Armada. And I think the flavor of those is the first. I mean, obviously, there are a lot of different flavors of IPOs, and we've seen some people doing, online pharmacies like Hims doing well and others. But most of the first flavor of IPOs was kind of infrastructure plays you talked about. And now we're having, service delivery companies in different specialties like hospital, MSK or in Armada's case, pre-diabetes and other stuff come to the market. There's a whole bolus of mental health companies who presumably are going to, some of them are already public, but there's a whole bunch more who at some point are going to have to figure out a way to get out. So, which are using telehealth primarily as well. So give me your sense as to, does the whole industry get a bit more respect, or is it still going to be that sort of, as this other stuff grows? Or is it only if you have AI tagged to your name that anybody cares?
I'm a little biased because of what we're going to talk about, but I would say that I think that there is a window of time where all those digital healthcare interventions are going to continue to generate some value, and in the eyes of people are worth investing in and so on, and we'll do some IPOs maybe this year or next year. Unfortunately for all of us in the healthcare business, healthcare is a knowledge business. I'm not talking about the blue collar part of healthcare where people do physical caregiving and everything else, but the vast majority of healthcare is the transmission of healthcare understanding and using it to care for people, to instruct medications and surgeries and everything else. We are very white collar, and I think the name of the game is AI, replacing most of it. I'm echoing things. I'm a small potato in the world of the Sam Altmans of the world and the Eric Schmidts of the world and so on. But I can't not other than echo their sentiment that I think we are looking at a sea change way faster than many people understand. I think that people are still having the averse reaction to talking to a bot or talking to a computer. But what would happen very, very quickly is that all of those services that are running AI are going to become accessible and affordable. And then people will have to say, yeah, I don't like talking to a bot, but will I pay 10 times to talk to someone that's wearing a white coat?
So I think, sorry, go ahead. Well, I think that's interesting, and I'm still of the opinion that some of this stuff's taken way longer than it should do, and there are some areas, and I'm thinking of mental health as one. Listen, you guys bought Conversa as part of your AmWell journey, which is essentially a conversational bot. Where this stuff has taken, has taken longer with a lot of simple stuff that you're now hearing a lot of discussions about could be done. But there's also a lot of very intense knowledge and how the human works with the computer is, on the provider side is still very much to be determined. But I think that there's you can't but see the massive possibilities for both expanding access and saving efficiency across the board. So with that, you now have a new thing called Aileen. AileenAI is your new company. What I don't know is how, you've announced it, but I don't know how much you've been working on it behind the scenes, how long, what you've got. Just give me a flavor of what is Aileen intended to do and how much you've done so far.
Sure. So in a way, Aileen recognizes the fact, first of all, that there's a large chunk of the population that really hasn't caught up with the digital health revolution. And that is, as you can expect, some of the older cohorts, right? The aging experience of American hasn't changed dramatically because of that, giant fluctuations or massive waves of digital healthcare. And, coming out of AmWell, that's always been kind of a nagging question at the back of our head. We actually talked about it a couple of times over the years, adoption, engagement, all of that fun stuff. The problem is that this is not an academic question. There is a reality. People call it a demographical cliff. They call it the silver tsunami, whatever, different names for it. There is just a biological truth where the cohorts of elders, we are going to be there soon enough, are unproportionately growing versus the population in the next 20 years. To the point that aging in Western society, not only in the United States, the aging cohorts of 70s and 80s are going to triple in size in comparison to their current stand in the population. We don't have anywhere near the caregiving resources to take care of them. And actually, the sad truth is that as the elder ages balloon in size, the caregiving profession is actually shrinking. People don't want to do it anymore. And frankly, it's a really hard job. It doesn't pay much. It's emotionally and physically draining. So we have a perfect storm right in front of us. And the one thing that I would say that has nothing to do with Aileen, just an observation, a logical observation, is that if one thing is going in this direction in a crazy speed, and what you need for it is going down, the labor that is supposed to handle it is going down, we need something else.
Absolutely.
This is working. And, in the last, 30 years, usually technology has been that one instrument, the one kind of dark horse that you can bring into something to give you some breathing room. And the question is now, how is technology going to give us a breathing room in caregiving? So that's kind of the background story for this.
I just point out that it's actually worse in Korea, Japan, and China than it is in Western Europe.
Right.
And the US at least still has immigration, and well, maybe we have immigration. I don't know what's going to go on there given the current regime. But we have a better demographic table, even though it's bad, than many other parts of the developed world, and it's an urgent crisis.
Without making any kind of a political statement, I would say that the new immigration policies are probably not going to add to the ranks of the caregiving community.
I think that's a safe statement.
So I think we have a problem. Yeah. And so the question is really about how technology is going to step in there. And this is where the focus of Aileen, which is the new company, is really at. Aileen's purpose is to extend the period of self-sufficiency of elders at home. And what that means is, and I want to be very specific, it means that if you are an aging person who is still in the period of life of invincibility, you're an empty nester, you travel the world, you do this, you do that, you take, knitting, I don't know what it is that you do. But if you're at that stage of life, you don't need Aileen. Also, if you've arrived at the point of your aging reality where you need physical help, I mean, you can't feed yourself, or you can't bathe, or you have to get up with support, or you fall down, or whatever it is, when you are at the point that you need physical help next to you, that is also not where Aileen is going to help you. But there is this entire span of time, which is actually very long, where the best way to describe it, where fragility sets in, where you're beginning to notice, you and your family and potentially your caregivers are beginning to notice a wobbly reality around you, where things are getting a little scary, or a little less safe, or could go along, a different way. And this is the part where, if we are able to support that period of life and to extend it, to help the family, to help the elder feel more reassured in that reality, rather than begin to consume those scarce caregiving resources, then not only from a humanitarian standpoint, but also from an actuarial standpoint, you have reduced the consumption of resources that are incredibly expensive. So there is a healthcare ROI to allowing elders to stay home longer. So now comes the question, so how do you increase the self-sufficiency? And you have to also especially figure out the notion that increasing self-sufficiency means that elders are more at home, more alone. So the loneliness issue is going to even further expand. And maybe I'll just say this, and you know me well enough, through the battles of telehealth and everything else. I do like to do things. If I can slaughter a couple of sacred cows, that makes it more interesting. And I think probably the one approach that Aileen is taking that is core to its direction is the assumption that we are more likely to be able to influence and reassure the life of an elder by establishing familiarity and companionship with them than if we were to introduce authoritarian voice into the life by telling them what they need to do. And that's really important because the vast majority of what healthcare does and its age tech derivatives is using what we know the elder needs to do to make them do that. And there's different ways. You can send them reminders, you can give them an electronic pillbox, you can put something that gamifies things, you can put a device with an orb on their desk and everything else. But we all know that all of these different instrumentations that just tell elders what they need to do, let me be kind in saying, has a limited effect on our society. And I'm really trying to be kind here. It didn't move the needle in a certain way. So Aileen starts by saying, well, let's partner on the life level first, make that the goal. And then if we are able to generate this regular presence in their life that is valuable, that generates companionship, camaraderie, intimacy, then we actually have a voice that we could use in order to do the right things. We know what the right things are. That part is not very complicated. Now, to do this, you have to establish engagement. You have to establish evergreen value, evergreen interest. And that is something that until, I don't know, 2 years ago was just not possible. You couldn't do it without people, and so on. But we all know that there's an avalanche of new technologies that are surfacing and maturing and reinventing themselves literally on a weekly basis now, that is beginning to light up the tooling that we need in order to do this. And they're at the very cutting edge. We're not talking about AI, we're talking about empathetic AI. We're talking about not only natural language processing, we're talking about sentiment analysis. These are very, very cutting edge elements, but they're becoming very, very real. So now you end up at a point where, and I'm just being aware of our time, our precious time together, the best way to look at how this approach to utilizing artificial intelligence is different is, I would say for the most part, I'm generalizing, AI has been utilized to learn trades. You take a large language model and you teach it, you feed it with everything so that it can be a doctor, or it can be a lawyer, or it can be an accountant, or it can be a call center agent that helps you fix something or whatever it is. And it's very good at doing this. What we're saying here is let's turn this thing on its head, and instead of feeding the world into it to learn a trade, let's utilize AI to learn a person. One person. And maybe the best way to think about it is, imagine that you're having a conversation, with the elder, with the senior person. The magic actually isn't in the conversation itself, is that when you hang up, when you conclude the conversation, the AI engine kicks into place and say, what have I learned about Matthew that I didn't know when we started the conversation? And use that information to replenish the understanding, to influence how the next conversation is going to be with you and what else you would be interested in, making sure that that kind of self-refreshing model of familiarity is at the center of all of this, because that is the purpose. Not telling you that you need to take a medication. That's a piece of cake. That's not the problem. To do this, I just say 2 more things about it. To do this, you have to, first of all, communicate in a way that with elders that doesn't create a learning curve. And even though the back end of Aileen is extreme cutting edge AI, NLP, and so on, the experiential end is the phone. Not only the phone, it's Aileen constantly calling. The reality is that we expect the engagement model to be extremely one-sided. We don't ask anybody. Elder doesn't even have a Wi-Fi. As long as we are able to generate vivacious, interesting, empathetic, and meaningful touch points by calling and saying, Aileen is calling you, then we have staying power. And the part that is, of course, also critical here is that because we have that ability to create a regular cadence of interaction, we have a granularity of observation that is really, really hard to mimic with labor-based caregiving. We can notice things that are subtle. To give you an example, if last week all of the calls were answered by 4 rings, so we called and it took 4 rings, but this week, for some reason, it's 15 rings until the elder picks up the phone, that lethargic response may be of some meaning, and then Aileen has the ability to autonomously escalate depending on the level of gravity, escalate by communicating to the kids, by communicating to a caregiver, or by essentially queuing up to an AmWell urgent care and have a clinician who's already briefed by the AI call up essentially and show up in front of that elder. So not doing it justice, but this approach of saying, let's build healthcare and well-being companionship to elders by going bottom up rather than the paternalistic healthcare view of let's do top down is fundamentally how Aileen is different. And that's probably the reason why the New England Journal of Medicine actually decided to publish it and did so last week. Even though, uncharacteristically, it doesn't exist. It's a very, very early, not exactly doesn't exist, but it's a very, very early stage, of Aileen as a corporation. But it's coming to light to a theater near you soon enough.
So the piece that I think is super interesting is I think you're right. We can all imagine the multiple different things you can build on top of this in terms of prompts and reminders and surveillance. And, there's a whole world of people trying to put, radar in the house to check if people are falling, and video and
IoT.
There's all kinds of stuff going, right? And you can imagine that, and you're essentially saying we're going to build a platform for that. We're going to build an intelligent agent which knows everything that's going on, and that the senior wants to communicate with, and it's going to be a big part of the surveillance, but also the prompting into different services. And I know exactly where I can imagine exactly where you're thinking about going, and different things are going to have to happen there. Yep. And you mentioned some of them already, right? Like maybe calling a doctor if there's an issue or what have you. So I guess the next sort of question is, on the other hand, you're talking about a big behavior change, and there are now people who are like, in love with the replica AI bot, talking to ChatGPT as their therapist, but this is not a mainstream thing yet. There are a lot of people using ChatGPT, but most of us are using it or Gemini for like basically search, right? Because it's now better at search than we are, and you can tell it to go do a comparison between 3 different companies you never heard of, and it'll come back and tell you about them, and it's great. And you used to have to hack around for a while, and this isn't even the sort of the deep research tools they have. So I guess the question is, how do you envisage the socialization of having a companion for people who don't understand AI, maybe lonely but don't really understand, right now being told when they go to the doctor, by the way, we're going to be using this ambient scribing, is that okay? We're at that level of introduction. How are you going to get there quickly enough to make a difference with the speed of the problem that you spoke about early on?
So I think you mentioned the 2 ingredients. First of all, and by the way, there's a lot of correlation to telehealth in this sense. Telehealth, when it started, never pretended to be the best healthcare you could find. But it ended up being incredibly useful where the best healthcare you could find was not accessible or not available to you. And that's when you use telehealth. There is a Even in the United States today, there are 18 million elders who live alone.
Sure.
And it doesn't mean that they don't have families. It just means that they're not exactly around them. When you have that kind of reality, and your option is to say, I give up and go into an assisted living or skilled nursing facility, you look for something else to help. And so we're not talking about how you and I would feel now about talking to a bot. You're talking about the reality of people who are faced with a very, very, very bad choice in front of them. And this may help them kick that can for later on. And that is incredibly valuable in a lot of different ways. So first of all, the thirst for something that will help you to remain self-sufficient is not to be undertaken lightly. The second thing is, I don't think that Aileen is something that you buy off Amazon. I also don't think that Aileen is something that gets prescribed to you by your doctor. I actually think that Aileen is introduced into your life as an elder by your kids, by your very, very close, trusted circle of caregivers, which may be a combination of a couple of professional caregivers and your kids and so on and so forth, who need a breathing room because they know that with your escalating needs, they just can't keep up. And they can't pay the growingly high premium of anything that would resemble what they can give their parent today. So Aileen steps into the life of an elder as an extension of their son or their daughter who says, Mom, Dad, I'm going to introduce you to a service that will help me take care of you, that will help me keep tabs on you. Because when I'm traveling for work or whatever it is, it's still going to check up with you 3 times or 4 times a day and let me know that you're okay. And oh, by the way, it's actually going to check up on me and let you know what I'm doing so that we can continue to be connected. And it's always watchful. And if there's any problem, it knows how to find me. And you can change the verbiage, but the principle here is that it gets introduced into the reality of elders as an additional bandwidth of the caregiving that they trust, not as an alternative to the caregiving they trust. And hopefully that gives you a sense.
Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense. And the real question is going to be, how useful is it and how accepted is it? And I don't know, calling someone, there might be people who want to be called 10 times a day, and there might be people who don't want to be called at all. And it's going to have to figure that out, right?
Yeah, but that part is easy. I'm telling you,
yeah.
the orchestration, the mechanics are not the issue. The issue is, do you have the intelligence to keep the relevancy evergreen?
Yeah. So on that point, 2 things. One is it's sounding very much voice-based. I don't know how, I haven't looked at the sort of the latest version of this demographics, but I suspect that if you look at the rest of the world, it's text-based. And so I don't know, are you going to do both? Is it going to be voice primarily? What do you think the secret sauce is for getting that engagement, and what are the tools you're going to be laying out? Are they in that? And then we'll talk about what it's going to talk about next.
Yeah, I think that this isn't so much about voice. I think that the engagement model has to be acceptingly unilateral. That's more important. You need to create a comforting experience that doesn't create an expectation from the elder to do something in order to keep the companionship going. And I think it will fail if you do it differently. So I think that the bedrock of the interaction is picking up the phone. That's it. With a known caller ID that your son said is going to call. And I think that creates the springboard. I talk about the fact, both in the New England Journal of Medicine article and in other places, that other modalities of interaction that move from asynchronous to synchronous to otherwise, with the incorporation of data that's coming from a validic blood pressure cuff and an intelligent refrigerator and so on and so forth, these are all additional layers of insight that influence the communication that Aileen does. But they're not the primary mode of communication, and we need to finally divorce from the idea that a relationship is cemented in one communication modality or the other. We are sophisticated enough to understand that you can be here and drop this and move on and continue there, and that at different times, different individuals, some would like text and some would not like text, and avatars on TVs maybe some for the, right for other people. And the same person, if they're having a really, really painful day, may have very short conversations or may only text because they don't want to talk to anybody. These are not complex technologically. We just need to understand the sensitivities and the behavioral implications of those. And we can. We're arrived at that point that we can do those things.
Yeah, and I've been thinking actually that the smart speaker, which has not yet really got tied into AI and the big language models, it's actually potentially very strong for this kind of companionship. And right now, people use their Alexas to. I mean, they didn't go quite where people thought it was going to go because they use it primarily just to do timing for cooking and and play music. But I can easily imagine it's relatively trivial to set up a house so that this could be attached to smart speakers. So it could call you on the phone, could be in the smart speaker that you can talk to back, forth, and then you're at the point where you really have a permanent companion who's there on call when you need them, not on call when you won't, but who can ping you when they need it. My wife now has a smart speaker telling my kids that they have to leave the house to go to school and stuff like that. It's starting to give. These are not instructions they're particularly interested in following, but they're children. They have to deal with that. But I think you can see what we're getting. We can see what we're getting there.
I just want to say one thing about what you just said. There's definitely excitement about anything ambient, and I think it has a bright future. But funnily enough, I had a conversation. Aileen is raising capital. It's really, really young. I had a conversation with someone who runs a large national real estate company that specializes in senior communities. And what he said, we just had coffee, and what he said, I want to build Aileen into the walls of every unit in my facilities. Because if I can tell people when you buy a unit here, you actually have a partner in your home. And there, if it's built into the wall and ambient, you can walk around and talk to it, and it becomes a regular presence in your life. What he said is not only that I can change the staffing that I need in order to run the facility, I differentiate the experience that I'm offering to the point that I can either mark it up or populate it much faster than I thought I could. And this is I'm not saying cynical, but this is a very real application that frankly, I didn't even write down in the business plan of Aileen. I think that's, later on, but this notion that an ambient presence that doesn't work on labor economics can become a meaningful, watchful, interesting partner in the life of people who lack partnership is inevitable.
No,
with Aileen, it's inevitable.
No, I agree with you. And one of Aileen's major jobs will be stopping all the other ambient bots calling, offering wanted or unwanted services. We're managing those. We obviously, you already see that very early on in sort of the calendar bots, and people. We're just getting to that, but you can tell that's going to be. I mean, the amount of companies I run into who are calling patients to offer programs or to deal with just in healthcare, right? To enroll them in something or just to deal with their drugs or to try to schedule something or what have you. You're going to need there'll be so many of them calling. Someone's got to manage that. And actually,
right? Yeah. These are all the ones that I want you to do something. Therefore, I'm calling you to sign up, or I'm reminding you to do this and that. That's the top down, the paternalistic healthcare that listen, I would have hired Johnny Ives, this companion, but it looks like Sam Altman got him already.
He may have paid more than you were willing to pay or had.
you haven't seen the oversubscription of Aileen. Who knows?
That's good. No, I'm with you. So that's fascinating. So then tell me, you just mentioned you're out raising money. You've been working on this behind the scenes for a year or so. Is that right?
Just about.
Okay. And give me a sense of where is the tech so far? When are you likely to actually start showing the world what it looks like and what it does? I mean, because you're not the only person who's thought about companions, and as you mentioned, things are changing quite quickly. On the other hand, you don't want to come up and it doesn't strike me. This is one of the things where you need to be ashamed of what you ship or whatever Reid Hoffman used to say. You probably have to get this kind of right, given the audience you're talking about. So tell me a bit about where you think the market introduction is going to, when and how the market introduction is going to work.
So to be completely transparent, so I'm fortunate to be in a position to see the company myself, but I'm actively raising the Series A, right? So in a normal way, nothing happened, right? We only have a business plan. You know me well enough, that's not exactly the case. So yes, there is a technology that's being built by a good couple of people who like to steal horses. I know enough about scalable productized technology that there is a lot that needs to be done from a proving point to a scalable point. And that's what the series is going to be about. But I'm pretty certain that some level of experiencing of Aileen could happen before Series A is even finalized. But I want to be honest about it. Like the build out of telehealth, what this introduces is a transformational approach to caregiving. It will take time. This is not something like telehealth. Makes perfect sense in day one. It still takes 10 years until it becomes, everybody's phone application. But I think that there's tremendous momentum, and what I found is that people get it, that the right people who have that deep ability to support a transformational healthcare change they get it quickly. They understand. I admit that the publication was very helpful in galvanizing the idea that this is really not your run-of-the-mill startup. But I would say that you will be able to experience Aileen in short order. I just leave it at that. But just to be fair, I mean, this is pre-closing of Series A. Okay? I'm still waiting on the cellophane paper and the SLAs.
Yes, I think if I recall rightly, when we first met at AmWell, you'd done a Series A then. There hadn't been, put it this way, there was not as much raised then as there was raised later.
That is significant Series A there, and we changed the world. So that was good.
So let me ask you then about the sort of the technological question, which I've been wrestling with, right? Which is, and I wrote a piece about AI not long ago, a couple of weeks back, basically saying, I don't know how you buy this stuff if you're a healthcare facility, because you have people inside your organization at Stanford and Mount Sinai and Cedars and wherever else building stuff on Claude and OpenAI. You have a bunch of people with point solutions, coming in and trying to fix one thing in radiology or one thing in notes or one thing in ambient describing or whatever. And then in the middle of it, you have your EMR of record who says they're going to do all this stuff with AI and bringing AI to you, especially with Epic, right? You have a similar, one of the things is how good do the big LLMs just get? Does this stuff just happen automatically out of them? And I guess that's kind of the question for you is that, do you think that an OpenAI or either an XAI or whatever, one of the different players who are buying all the NVIDIA chips and putting in the nuclear power plant next door to run the data centers and all this kind of stuff, are they going to be developing a generic companion bot, and is that going to be the competition? Or are you going to be something that are people like Aileen and other competitors of you who have kind of a focus around senior living, which is healthcare, but a lot of other stuff as well? Is there going to be a vibrant marketplace of people lying on top of these bigger LLMs? How do you think that all plays out?
I think I'll give you two quick answers. One, and I want to plagiarize what Sam Altman said. He said there are two ways to deploy AI. You can take and license an LLM and then feed it with all of your documentation, all of the training data that you have, and you're becoming very, very specific to what you do, and then you're married with it. That is your product forever and ever and ever. And that is what he says 98% of the companies out there are doing. They're teaching LLMs to do what they do. And what he said, the right way to do it is to actually ride the wave of the evolution of AI, which means that you actually have to figure out how the smarts of what you do are not inside the LLM, but outside of the LLM, so that as new LLMs are coming out every week, you're going to be able to be the best out there. You continue to be the best, which he said less than 2% of the companies are actually doing this, which is what I thought everybody's going to be doing. Right. And I fully subscribe to that statement. So the way that, and that ties into Aileen and to your question, because I believe that the future of this is not going to be by one company with a killer LLM or one company with a killer product. I believe that you will inevitably have a diversified world of services that are utilizing AI in some shape or form. And the winning experience, I'm not talking about who wins the money here, but the winning experience will be the one that will be able to utilize the right AI service for the right task. And specifically in healthcare, for example, I don't want Aileen to be talking about the acute recovery from, triple bypass. But I know that Hippocratic AI can, and that's what they do for a living. So the ability to navigate patients through those electronic resources wins the day. And I think, to some degree, the LLMs are a little, the question about the LLM is a little bit like at the beginning of telehealth, people were saying, well, so who's going to do the best video conferencing? And if you do video conferencing, are you going to kill telehealth? And we know now over and over and over again that the video conferencing is the cherry on top. The complexity is understanding availability and licensure and coverage and, eligibility and payment and deductibles and, whatever, credentialing and 50 million other elements that are needed to be internalized before you even begin to understand how to orchestrate telehealth services. I think there's a lot of analogy to that also in the model of AI caregiving. And it's not going to go away. Life is complex.
Well, that's certainly a true statement. No, I think you're dead right, because the ability to figure out, the growth of the underlying technology and then integrate that into the other technologies. I was kind of kidding. We were joking about keeping the other calls out, but you are going to want to know which one calls to bring in, and then where to bring in the human, and where to bring in the etc. And we're seeing that play out right now with doctors, using ChatGPT and using Open Evidence and all these other tools, right, which are coming really fast at them and sort of replacing what they used to have a book and they're up to date, and now they have all these other ways of figuring it out. And the blend between the human and the AI is something that we're going to continue to work on. But as you said, you said in this piece and said in your article, we still have a lot of people who want to be doctors. Maybe not enough. You don't have many people who want to be caregivers, especially given what's coming up. So it is an area where we need a lot of help.
We do. We need much more help, and the unfortunate, inconvenient truth is that we won't feel it until we get into that position. The unfortunate truth is that ungraceful aging is a silent problem, because most of the people that experience it don't have a voice. By the way, they do cost us through our taxes, because we still have to pay 25% of our GDP to care for them. So it's a bizarre situation where nobody's saying that anything is wrong, but everybody's unknowingly, quietly paying to solve the problem that is unsolvable. So anyway, it's upon us.
Yeah, no, and it goes back to what you said earlier. We were kidding before we got on the air. We're not kidding about, we should be building an elder care facility that we can all go live in and want to design what we like. We have to think about designing a better end of life, better end of last stage of living, which and by the way, meanwhile, all these people talking about longevity and keeping us alive to 120. So this becomes more and more on point. I'm not sure I'm so keen about that one. We'll see. Anyway,
we're going to have other issues.
All right. I've been talking with Roy Schoenberg. He is just starting on a new thing, AileenAI. Roy, really excited to see how this goes, and come back, and I want to be one of the first places you show the world how Aileen actually interacts. And hopefully I won't be theoretically old enough to need it by then.
No.
So don't be too long. All right. Thanks, Roy. Thanks for your time.
Great to see you, man. Thank you.